The phone rang at 2:17 a.m., a shrill sound that sliced through the stillness of Evelyn Carter's San Francisco apartment. She jolted awake, her hand fumbling for the device on the nightstand. The screen glowed with an unknown number, no name, no caller ID. As a hostage negotiator with 15 years on the job, she knew calls like this rarely meant good news. "Carter," she answered, her voice hoarse but steady. "Evelyn Carter?" The voice was male, low, and distorted, electronic, likely a modulator. "We have Miles Dalton. 8 years old, son of tech mogul Preston Dalton. You're the one we want to talk to." Her pulse quickened. Preston Dalton was the CEO of Nexus Tech, a Bay Area giant worth billions. His son's kidnapping wasn't just a crime, it was a headline waiting to explode. "Slow down," she said, slipping into her calm negotiator tone. "Let's start with proof. Is Miles okay?" A rustling sound, then a small, shaky voice. I'm scared. I want my dad." "Miles?" His fear was raw, unscripted. Evelyn's chest tightened, but she kept her focus. "He's fine for now," the kidnapper cut in. $1 million in cash, unmarked, by tomorrow night. "No cops, no feds, just you. We'll text coordinates. You bring the money to the Redwood Forest." "Alone?" "Redwood Forest," she echoed, already pulling on jeans. "That's hundreds of miles of wilderness. I need more. Figure it out, Carter." Clock's ticking. The line went dead. She stared at the phone, mind racing. The redwoods stretched across northern California, dense, foggy, and unforgiving. A drop point there meant isolation, no backup, and terrain that could swallow you whole. She grabbed her go bag, flashlight, first aid, Glock 19, and dialed Preston Dalton's private line, a number she'd gotten after negotiating a corporate blackmail case for him 2 years ago. He picked up on the first ring. "Evelyn? What's happening?" "They've got Miles," she said, cutting to it. "Called me direct. 1 million, Redwood Forest, tomorrow night. They want me solo." Preston's breath hitched. "Oh God, I'll get the money. What do we do?" "First, no police yet, they'll smell it a mile off. I need everything you've got on Miles, photos, habits, anything odd lately. And a jet. I'm not driving to Humboldt County." "Done," he said, voice cracking. "Jet's at SFO fueled. I'll meet you there with the cash and his file." She hung up, adrenaline surging. At 38, Evelyn was lean and sharp, her dark hair cropped short, her hazel eyes hardened by years of staring down desperate men. She'd talked bank robbers out of shootouts and freed captives from cartel dens, but a kid in the wilderness? That was new territory. An hour later, she boarded Dalton's private Cessna at San Francisco International, the night sky a blanket of stars. Preston sat across from her, pale and disheveled, clutching a duffel bag stuffed with cash and a tablet with Miles' info. The boy was small for his age, blonde, blue-eyed, loved dinosaurs and coding, details that made him real, vulnerable. "They've been off-grid," Preston said, handing her the tablet. "No ransom note, no trace until now." "Why you?" "Because I'm good," she replied, scanning the file. "And they know I don't bluff." The jet landed at a private airstrip near Arcata by 4 a.m., the air thick with coastal fog. A rented Jeep waited, keys in the ignition. Preston stayed behind, wringing his hands. "Bring him back, Evelyn. Please." "I will," she promised, though the odds felt like a knife's edge. Her phone buzzed, coordinates, 41.2994 degrees north, 123.9981 degrees west, deep in the redwoods, miles from any road. She plugged them into her GPS, grabbed the duffel, and drove north, the Jeep's headlights cutting through the mist. The forest loomed ahead, ancient trees towering like sentinels, their branches swallowing the dawn. By 6 a.m. she reached a dirt trailhead, the GPS pinging her destination, a 10-mile hike into the wilderness. She strapped on a backpack, water, rope, radio, and slung the cash over her shoulder. The trail was narrow, roots snaking across the path, the air heavy with pine and damp earth. Her boots crunched on needles as she moved, senses on high alert. 3 miles in, a twig snapped behind her. She froze, hand on her Glock, but saw only a deer darting through the underbrush. Paranoia or instinct? She pressed on, the forest growing denser, darker. At mile 7, her phone buzzed again, no signal, just a preloaded message, "Look for the red ribbon." "Drop the bag." "Wait." Ahead, tied to a massive redwood, fluttered a crimson ribbon. She set the duffel down, scanning the trees. Silence, then a rustle. A figure emerged, hooded, rifle in hand. "Carter," he growled. "You're early." "Where's Miles?" she demanded, voice level. "Close," he said, stepping forward. "But this isn't just about money." Evelyn stood rooted to the forest floor, her eyes locked on the hooded figure with the rifle. The red ribbon fluttered faintly in the breeze, a stark slash of color against the muted greens and browns of the Redwood Forest. The duffel bag of cash sat between them, $1 million in unmarked bills, yet the kidnapper's words hung heavier than the payout. "This isn't just about money." "What's that supposed to mean?" she asked, her tone measured, hands visible but ready to move. Years of training had taught her to read people, posture, voice, eyes, but the hood and modulator masked everything human about this one. "Means you're not just a delivery girl," he said, stepping closer, the rifle steady. "Dalton's got enemies. You're here to fix more than a kidnapping." "Enemies don't scare me," she replied. "I'm here for Miles. Show me he's alive or this ends now." The figure tilted his head as if weighing her resolve. Then he reached into his jacket and tossed a small object. It landed at her feet, a dinosaur keychain, green plastic, chipped from use. Miles' file flashed in her mind, "Loves dinosaurs." Her stomach nodded, but she kept her face neutral. "He's breathing," the kidnapper said. "For now, pick up the bag. Follow me." "Follow you?" She crossed her arms. "I don't walk blind into a trap. Give me coordinates, a meet point, something I can work with." He chuckled, a distorted rasp. "You're not in a boardroom, Carter. This is my turf. Move or the kid's next call is his last." Evelyn's jaw tightened. She had the Glock, but drawing it now risked Miles. She hoisted the duffel, its weight digging into her shoulder, and nodded. "Lead on." He turned, vanishing into the trees, his dark figure blending with the shadows. She followed, boots sinking into the mossy earth, the forest closing around them like a living cage. The trail twisted, unmarked, no path a hiker would find. Ferns brushed her legs, and the air grew colder, damper, the canopy blocking what little daylight remained. Her GPS was useless here, signal dead, compass spinning from the iron-rich soil. They walked for an hour, maybe two, time blurred in the endless green. Her calves burned, but she kept pace, memorizing landmarks. A gnarled stump, a fallen log split by lightning. If this went south, she'd need a way out. The kidnapper stopped at a clearing, a rare gap in the trees where fog pooled like smoke. A second figure waited, shorter, stockier, a pistol holstered at his hip. "Bag," the first said, pointing. She dropped it, stepping back, hands raised slightly. "Where's Miles?" she pressed, scanning the clearing. No sign of the boy, no cries, no movement. "Close," the second said, voice unmodulated, gruff, natural. "A mistake or arrogance. But we need something first." "More than $1 million?" she said, eyebrow arched. "Greedy's a bad look." "Not cash," the first cut in. "Information. Dalton's got a project, Nexus Lock. Encryption software, military grade. We want the access codes." Evelyn's mind raced. Nexus Lock. She'd heard whispers during her last job for Preston. A security system so tight even the Pentagon was sniffing around. "You're not kidnappers," she said slowly. "You're hackers. Or spies. Call us what you want," the second growled, hand on his pistol. "Codes, or the kid's a liability." "I'm not Dalton," she said, stalling. "I don't have codes. I negotiate, not code break." "Then you'll get them," the first said. "Call him. Now." She pulled her phone, no bars, but they didn't need to know that. "No signal. Forest's a dead zone," the second cursed, pacing. "We planned for that. There's a sat phone in the bag bottom pocket. Use it." Evelyn knelt, unzipping the duffel, her fingers brushing the cold metal of a satellite phone. A lifeline or a leash. She powered it on, the screen glowing green, and dialed Preston. He answered instantly. "Evelyn? Is Miles?" "They've got him," she interrupted, eyes on the kidnappers. "They want Nexus Lock codes, not just cash." "What's this about?" Preston's silence was deafening. Then, "It's classified. Beyond top secret. If they get it, they'll kill Miles," she snapped. "Talk." "It's a backdoor," he admitted, voice low. "Unlocks every Nexus tech system. Banks, governments, everything. I can't give it up." "Then he's dead," the first kidnapper barked, loud enough for Preston to hear. "Give me something," Evelyn pleaded. "A decoy, anything." Another pause. "Okay, tell them Alpha 7 Kilo 9. It's fake. Buys time. She relayed it, watching the kidnappers scribble it down. The first nodded. Smart man. We'll verify. If it's good, you see the kid tomorrow. And if it's not? She asked. The second smirked. You'll hear him scream. They grabbed the bag and melted into the trees, leaving her alone in the clearing. Evelyn sank to her knees, the sat phone clutched in her hand. A fake code, a ticking clock, and Miles still out there. She had to find him before they cracked the ruse. The clearing was silent again, the kidnappers' footsteps swallowed by the Redwood Forest's endless hush. Evelyn sat for a moment, the sat phone heavy in her hand, Preston's fake code. Alpha 7 Kilo 9, echoing in her mind. It was a gamble, a thin thread to keep Miles alive until she could outmaneuver them. But sitting here wasn't an option. She had to find the boy, and fast, before they tested the code and realized it was a lie. She stood, brushing damp moss from her knees, and took stock. The kidnappers had headed northwest, their tracks faint but visible in the soft earth. Boot prints, one with a notched heel. She slung her backpack tighter, checked her Glock. Full clip, safety off, and started after them, the forest's gloom pressing in. The redwoods loomed taller here, their trunks wide as houses, roots twisting like veins underfoot. Fog thickened, curling around branches, turning every shadow into a threat. Evelyn moved carefully, her negotiator's calm warring with the primal urge to run. She wasn't a tracker, but she'd trained with SWAT, enough to follow a trail, read a broken twig, a scuffed stone. The kidnappers weren't amateurs. They'd chosen this wilderness for a reason. No cell towers, no drones, just nature's own fortress. Her radio crackled faintly, useless static. The sat phone was her only link, and she couldn't risk it yet. An hour in, the tracks veered off the faint path, dipping into a ravine where a creek trickled, its water icy and clear. She paused, crouching to inspect a snapped fern. They'd crossed here, the notched heel print deeper. Carrying something heavy? The duffel, maybe, or Miles. Her throat tightened at the thought of the boy, scared and alone, dragged through this maze. She waded the creek, the cold biting through her boots, and climbed the far bank. The trail grew messier. More prints, overlapping, a third set joining in, smaller, lighter. 3 of them now. Team, not a lone wolf. The new prints suggested a woman or a smaller man, someone agile. Evelyn filed it away, her mind spinning scenarios. Hired muscle, a tech thief, a mastermind pulling strings? The forest darkened as the sun climbed, its light snuffed by the canopy. She checked her watch. 10 a.m. hours since the drop, and exhaustion tugged at her limbs. She sipped water, ate a protein bar, and pressed on, the trail climbing a ridge. At the top, she froze. Below, nestled in a hollow, was a cabin ramshackle with weathered gray, a thin wisp of smoke curling from its chimney. A hideout. She dropped low, pulling binoculars from her pack. The cabin was small, 1 room maybe, with a single window and a sagging porch. No movement outside, but the smoke meant someone was there. Miles? The kidnappers? She scanned the perimeter. 2 ATVs parked under a tarp, tire tracks leading off into the trees. They had wheels, an escape plan. She didn't. Her options narrowed. Storming in was suicide, 3 against 1, armed, and she hadn't seen their full firepower. Waiting risked them moving Miles or testing the code. She needed leverage, a way to shift the power. The sat phone buzzed in her pocket. Preston. Evelyn, he whispered, frantic. Anything? Found a cabin, she murmured, keeping low. They're here or were. Gave them your fake code. It won't hold long. I'm working on the real one, he said. But it's locked in a vault, biometric, my print only. I can't get there fast enough. Don't, she snapped. If they get Nexus lock, it's over. I'll handle this. How? His voice broke. They'll kill him. I've got a plan, she lied, hanging up. She didn't yet, but she'd negotiated with worse odds. She crept closer, staying in the trees, the cabin now 100 yards off. A figure stepped onto the porch, the the stocky one from the clearing, pistol still holstered. He lit a cigarette, oblivious to her. She studied him. Mid-30s, scruffy, tense. Not the leader, too sloppy. The hooded one with the rifle was the brains, she'd bet. A faint cry drifted from the cabin. Hi. Scared. Miles. Alive. Her heart leapt, but she held still. Rushing in now would get them both killed. She needed a distraction, a way to split them. The ATVs caught her eye, fuel cans strapped to their sides. Risky but workable. She circled wide, reaching the tarp unseen. The cans were half full, sloshing as she unscrewed one. She poured a trail of gas into the brush, leading back to her ridge, then lit a match from her pack. The flame caught, slow at first, then roared, a line of fire snaking toward the ATVs. She bolted to cover, counting seconds. The explosion was sharp, a boom that shook the trees, flames licking the vehicles. The stocky man yelled, sprinting toward it, joined by the hooded figure from inside. 2 down, 1 left guarding Miles if her count was right. She had her window. The forest erupted in chaos as the ATVs burned, black smoke billowing into the canopy. Evelyn crouched behind a redwood, the heat of the fire prickling her skin even from 50 yards away. The stocky kidnapper cursed loudly, stomping at the flames with his boots, while the hooded one, the leader, shouted orders, his modulated voice cutting through the crackle. Get the gear. Move it. They were distracted, frantic, exactly what she'd wanted. She didn't waste time. The cabin was unguarded now, its door ajar, the third kidnapper nowhere in sight. Miles' cry had come from inside, faint but real. She slipped through the trees, Glock drawn, her breath steady despite the adrenaline flooding her veins. The fire roared behind her, a perfect screen masking her approach. She reached the porch, boards creaking under her weight, and peered through the window. Inside, the cabin was a mess: cots, takeout boxes, a laptop glowing on a rickety table. And there, in the corner, was Miles Dalton, blonde hair matted, wrists bound with zip ties, a gag loose around his neck. He sat on a sleeping bag, knees to his chest, eyes wide with terror. No third kidnapper. Either they'd miscounted or the smaller prints belonged to one of the two outside. Evelyn eased the door open, wincing as it squeaked. Miles' head snapped up, a whimper escaping him. She raised a finger to her lips, stepping inside, her gun trained on the empty space. Miles, she whispered, kneeling beside him. I'm Evelyn. I'm getting you out. He nodded, tears streaking his dirt-smudged face. She pulled a knife from her pack, slicing the zip ties. His wrists were raw, red from struggling. Can you walk? She asked. Why, yeah, he stammered, voice tiny. They're mean. They hit me. Her jaw clenched. Not anymore. Stay close. She helped him up, his small hand trembling in hers, and scanned the room. The laptop caught her eye open, displaying a command prompt, lines of code scrolling. Nexus lock? She couldn't tell, but it was evidence. She grabbed it, shoving it into her backpack, then moved to the door. Outside, the fire still raged, the kidnappers' shouts growing desperate. We've got no ride, the stocky one yelled. What now? Shut up and grab the cash, the hooded one barked. We hike out. Evelyn cursed under her breath. They'd be back soon, seconds, maybe. The cabin had no back exit, just the front door and a grimy window too small for her. She needed a plan fast. Miles, she said, crouching. When I say run, you go left into the trees. Don't stop, don't look back. Got it? He nodded, clutching her sleeve. She peeked out, the kidnappers were at the ATVs, backs turned, wrestling with the duffel bag as flames licked closer. Now or never. Run, she hissed, shoving the door wide. Miles bolted, skinny legs pumping, vanishing into the brush. She followed, firing 2 shots into the air, crack, crack, hoping to draw them away from him. It worked. The hooded one spun, rifle up, spotting her. Carter, he roared, charging toward the cabin. The stocky one followed, pistol drawn. Evelyn dove into the trees, zigzagging as bullets thudded into bark. She lost sight of Miles. Good, he'd stuck to the plan. Her lungs burned, the uneven ground tripping her up, but she kept moving, leading them away. A root snagged her ankle and she stumbled, rolling down a slope into a dry creek bed. Pain shot through her knee, but she scrambled up, gun still in hand. The kidnappers' footsteps pounded closer, their voices sharp. She's got the kid, the stocky one yelled. No, she doesn't. Split up, the leader ordered. Find him. Evelyn pressed against a boulder, catching her breath. They didn't know Miles was free, her shots had bought confusion. She checked her watch, 2 p.m. hours until dark, and the forest was vast. Miles could hide, but he wouldn't last long. Cold, scared, no food. She had to double back, find him before they did. Her sat phone buzzed. Preston again. She answered, whispering, "Not now." "Heard shots," he said, panicked. "What's happening?" "Got Miles out. They're hunting us. Stay off the line. I'll call when it's safe." She hung up, peering over the boulder. The stocky one lumbered past, 30 yards off, oblivious. The leader was out of sight, smarter, hunting Miles. She couldn't take them both, not head-on. Her knee throbbed, slowing her, but she climbed out of the creek bed, retracing her steps toward the cabin's hollow. Minutes later, she spotted a flash of blonde hair. Miles, huddled under a fern, shivering. "Evelyn," he whispered, rushing to her. She hugged him tight, relief flooding her. "We're not out yet," she said, scanning the trees. "Stay quiet." A twig snapped nearby. She turned, gun up, as the hooded kidnapper emerged, rifle aimed. "End of the line, Carter." Evelyn stared down the barrel of the hooded kidnapper's rifle, her Glock steady in her grip despite the ache in her knee. Miles clung to her leg, his small frame trembling against her. The forest around them a cathedral of towering redwoods and suffocating silence. The fire from the ATVs had died to a smolder in the distance, its smoke drifting through the trees like a ghost. The stocky kidnapper was still out there, hunting, but this one, the leader, was the real threat. "Drop the gun, Carter," he said, his modulated voice cold. "Kid comes with me. Nexus Lock's a big prize, but you're risking a lot for a backdoor." "It's not just a backdoor," he said, stepping closer, rifle unwavering. "It's the key to everything: banks, grids, secrets. Dalton's sitting on a gold mine and we're cashing in." "Who's we?" she pressed, shifting slightly, shielding Miles. "You're not some lone wolf with a grudge. Who's pulling your strings?" "Wouldn't you like to know?" he sneered. "Put the gun down, or I stop asking nicely." Miles whimpered, and Evelyn tightened her grip on him. "Stay still," she murmured, then raised her voice. "You shoot, I shoot. We're both dead and your payday's gone. Think it through." Tense beat. His finger hovered on the trigger, but he didn't fire. She was right. He needed Miles alive, leverage against Preston. She had seconds to turn this. Her free hand brushed her pocket, the sat phone. A long shot, but it might work. "Fine," she said, lowering her Glock slowly, feigning surrender. "Let's talk. What do you need from Dalton?" "Everything," he said, relaxing his stance just enough. "Nexus Lock's full schematics, not some fake string. Call him. Get it?" She nodded, pulling the sat phone, her thumb discreetly hitting redial. Preston picked up, silent. She trained him to listen first. "Dalton," she said loudly. "They know the code's fake. Want Nexus Lock schematics now, or Miles is dead." The kidnapper tilted his head, satisfied. Preston's voice crackled faintly. "Evelyn, shut up and listen." She cut in, praying he'd catch on. "They're armed, 2 of them, in the redwoods near a burned-out cabin. Send help quiet, no sirens. Coordinates are 41.2994 degrees north, 123.9981 degrees west. Move fast." The kidnapper lunged, realizing too late. "What the hell?" She dropped the phone, swinging the Glock up, firing. The shot grazed his shoulder, spinning him back. He roared, returning fire, but she dove, tackling Miles into the creek bed as bullets chewed the dirt above. "Run!" she yelled, shoving him downstream. He scrambled, disappearing into the brush. She rolled, popping up to fire again, 2 shots, one hitting his leg. He stumbled, cursing, but didn't drop the rifle. Blood stained his hoodie, yet he advanced, limping. "You're dead, Carter," he snarled, raising the gun. A crack echoed, not hers. The stocky kidnapper burst from the trees, pistol blazing, but his aim was wild, panicked. She ducked, firing back, catching him in the chest. He crumpled, gasping, as the leader swung toward her again. She was out of moves, ammo low, knee screaming, no cover. Then a rustle, Miles, bless him, hurling a rock from the bushes. It smacked the leader's head, a dull thud, stunning him. Evelyn seized the moment, charging, slamming her Glocks but into his temple. He dropped out cold, rifle clattering. Breathing hard, she zip-tied his wrists with spares from her pack, then checked the stocky one, dead, eyes glassy. Miles crept out pale but brave. "Did I help?" he asked. "You saved us," she said, hugging him. "Good throw." The sat phone lay in the dirt, Preston's voice faint. "Evelyn? Help's coming, Rangers off-grid team." "Hold on." "Got it," she said, picking it up. "Two down, one's alive." "Hurry." She sank beside Miles, the forest still around them. The leader groaned, stirring, but he wasn't going anywhere. She'd won the standoff, but the we he'd mentioned gnawed at her. This wasn't over. Someone bigger was out there, and they'd come for Nexus Lock again. The Redwood Forest settled into an eerie calm as Evelyn sat beside Miles, her Glock resting on her knee, the hooded kidnapper unconscious at her feet. The stocky one lay dead nearby, his blood soaking into the moss, a grim testament to the fight. Miles huddled close, his small hand gripping her sleeve, his breathing steadying now that the gunfire had stopped. The sat phone crackled with Preston's voice, promising help, but the weight stretched long in the damp, shadowed hollow. Evelyn's knee throbbed, her body ached. But her mind was sharp, replaying the leader's words. "We're not done with Dalton yet. Not we. This wasn't a solo gig or a two-man job. Someone else was behind it. Someone with the resources to chase Nexus Lock's secrets through the wilderness. She needed answers before the Rangers arrived, before this slipped out of her hands." She nudged the kidnapper with her boot. He groaned, stirring. His hood askew enough to reveal a scarred jaw and dark stubble. "Wake up," she said, voice cold. "You've got one chance to talk before the law gets here." His eyes fluttered open, unfocused, then sharpened with defiance. "You won't get shit," he rasped, the modulator gone, his real voice rough and accented. "Eastern European, maybe." "Wrong," she said, pressing the Glock to his wounded shoulder. He winced, biting back a scream. "Who's we? Who sent you?" He glared, but pain loosened his tongue. "You think this ends with me? Bigger fish want Nexus Lock. They'll gut Dalton with or without the kid." "Names," she snapped, leaning in. "Or I make this hurt." "Varga," he spat, blood flecking his lips. "That's all you get. Kill me. They'll still come." Varga. A name vague but a thread. She filed it away as rotor blades thumped in the distance. Help, finally. Miles perked up, hope flickering in his blue eyes. "Is that Dad?" "Soon," she said, ruffling his hair. "You're safe now." A helicopter broke through the canopy. A blacked-out bird with no markings. Preston's off-grid team, not Rangers. 4 men in tactical gear rappelled down, securing the scene. One, a grizzled leader with a buzz cut, approached. "Carter? Dalton sent us. You've got a mess here." "Under control," she said, standing, wincing at her knee. "One dead, one alive. Kid's okay. Get us out." They loaded the kidnapper, Varga's man, onto a stretcher, his wrists cuffed tight. Miles clung to Evelyn as they boarded, the chopper lifting off, the forest shrinking below. She handed the laptop from the cabin to Buzzcut. "Evidence. They were after Nexus Lock. Check the logs." He nodded, stowing it. "Dalton's waiting at Arcata. Feds are inbound. He couldn't keep them out." "Good," she muttered. The bigger fish Varga would need more than her Glock to handle. The jet waited at the airstrip, Preston pacing beside it, his face a mask of relief and exhaustion. Miles ran to him, sobbing, and Preston dropped to his knees, hugging his son tight. "Thank you," he choked out, looking at Evelyn. "Name your price." "Answers," she said, limping over. "Who's Varga?" Preston paled. "Dmitry Varga? Russian oligarch, cybercrime kingpin. He's been after Nexus Lock for months. I thought it was corporate espionage, not this." "He's not done," she warned. "Your fake code bought time, but they'll hit again." He nodded, grim. "I'll lock it down, move the vault, triple security. Feds can take the rest." The team handed the kidnapper and laptop to a waiting FBI unit, agents swarming like ants. Evelyn gave her statement, terse, factual, omitting Varga's name for now. She'd chased that lead herself off the books. This was personal. On the flight back to San Francisco, Miles slept against her, his dinosaur keychain clutched tight. Preston sat across, staring out the window. "You're a miracle, Evelyn. How do you do it?" "Instinct," she said, eyes on the horizon. "And a good bluff." Back home, she collapsed onto her couch, knee-iced, Glock on the table. The TV blared news. Tech Air rescued from Redwood Forest, kidnappers in custody. No mention of Varga yet. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Well played, Carter. Next time. She stared at it, a chill creeping up her spine. Varga knew her name. The forest was just the start. She'd saved Miles, broken the ring, but the real fight loomed, a shadow bigger than the redwoods. For now, she'd rest. Tomorrow, she'd hunt.